This video is for educational purposes only, not medical advice. Always consult your doctor before making any dietary or lifestyle changes. 12 wooden staffs laid out overnight in the most sacred room the Israelites had, the kind of room ordinary people weren't even allowed to enter. By morning, one of them hadn't just sprouted a leaf, the way anyone might expect from a stick left near water. It had budded, blossomed, and produced ripe almonds, all in a single night, while the other 11 staffs sat exactly as dry and lifeless as they'd been the evening before, untouched. Dorothy, no relation to the honey video, a different Dorothy, the kind of coincidence that happens more often than you'd think, has a carton of almond milk in her fridge right now. Same brand every week, poured over cereal most mornings without a second thought, never once connected in her mind to anything beyond the grocery store shelf it came from. I'm not going to tell you the full story behind that staff yet, or exactly what it grew into overnight. But by the end of this video, you'll know exactly what happened in that room. Why almonds specifically were chosen for the miracle out of everything that could have grown, and one simple way to bring real almond milk, made the way people actually made it for thousands of years, into your own kitchen. If you're new here, subscribe to Ancestral Fix. It genuinely helps this channel more than you'd probably guess. And if you do it right now, you can go about the rest of your day knowing you've already helped someone today. Every week, we find what the ancient world knew and what your body still needs. Stay with me. In the book of Numbers, chapter 17, a dispute breaks out among the tribes of Israel over who has the right to serve as priest. Tension serious enough that God intervenes with a test nobody could argue with afterward. God's solution is remarkably specific. Each tribe brings a wooden staff, one per tribe, and all 12 are placed overnight in the tabernacle, the most sacred space the Israelites had, the same place where the presence of God himself was said to dwell. Whichever staff shows a sign of life by morning belongs to the tribe God has chosen. Aaron's staff, representing the tribe of Levi, is the one placed among the other 11, indistinguishable at that point from any of them. The next morning, Aaron's staff hasn't just survived the night. It has budded, blossomed, and produced ripe almonds, 3 separate stages of a growth cycle that would normally take weeks or months, all completed in a single night, on a dead, cut piece of wood with no roots, no soil, and no water at all. The other 11 staffs remain exactly as dry and lifeless as they were the evening before, which is precisely the point. The contrast wasn't subtle. Ever wonder why almonds specifically out of every fruit and nut that grew in the region? That's worth sitting with for a moment. Almond trees held a very particular reputation in the ancient Near East. They were known as the first tree to bloom each spring, often flowering while the surrounding landscape still looked bare and lifeless from winter, weeks before any other tree showed a single sign of life. In Hebrew, the word for almond tree, shaked, is closely related to the word meaning to watch or to be alert. The tree that wakes up first, watching for spring before anything else does. That symbolism wasn't incidental to the miracle. A staff that was supposed to represent watchfulness and divine attention blossomed into the exact tree already associated with waking early and paying attention, as if the plant itself had been chosen for the metaphor long before that particular night in the tabernacle. Almonds appear elsewhere in Scripture too. In the book of Genesis, Jacob sends almonds as part of a gift to Egypt's ruler, one of the few items specifically named among the gifts, suggesting it was considered valuable enough to send as tribute to a foreign power during a famine when every item chosen would have mattered. This wasn't a rare, exotic nut reserved for the wealthy. It was significant enough, familiar enough, to carry real weight as a gift, and rich enough in symbolism to be the exact tree chosen for one of the most dramatic instances of divine selection in the entire Old Testament. So what did people in the ancient Near East actually do with almonds, beyond eating them whole out of hand or roasted? This is where Dorothy's carton comes back into the picture. Almond milk, made by soaking almonds in water and pressing out the liquid, has a documented history going back centuries in the Mediterranean and Middle Eastern world, used particularly during periods when dairy milk was scarce, expensive, or restricted by religious dietary practice, since it kept without spoiling the way fresh milk did in the heat. It wasn't invented as a modern dairy alternative, marketed with a clever health angle. It was, for a very long time, simply almond milk, made because almonds were plentiful and the process was straightforward, using nothing but the nut itself and water, no factory required. Here's what's changed since then, and it's worth knowing before your next grocery trip. Modern commercial almond milk, the kind sitting in Dorothy's carton, often contains surprisingly few actual almonds. Some brands use as little as 2% almonds, with the rest made up of water, thickeners, stabilizers, and added sugar to compensate for how thin and flavorless that low a concentration actually tastes on its own. The traditional version people made for centuries was considerably more concentrated, closer to what you'd get from actually pressing a meaningful quantity of nuts rather than a token amount for flavoring. Let's move into why this matters more specifically after 60. Almonds are naturally rich in vitamin E, magnesium, and healthy monounsaturated fats, and homemade almond milk retains meaningfully more of these nutrients than a heavily diluted commercial version built primarily around shelf stability and cost. None of this makes almond milk a superfood or a cure for anything. It simply means that a homemade version, made the way it traditionally was, delivers considerably more of what almonds actually offer than a thin, mostly water carton from the store. Now, before you assume every commercial almond milk is equally diluted, that's not entirely fair either. Some brands are considerably more concentrated than others, and checking the ingredient list, looking specifically for the percentage of almonds listed, is worth 30 seconds the next time you're standing in that aisle. So how would you actually make this yourself? Soak a cup of raw almonds in water overnight, then drain and rinse them the next morning. Blend the soaked almonds with about 4 cups of fresh water for a minute or two until the mixture turns milky white. Strain the mixture through a nut milk bag or a clean, thin dish towel, squeezing out as much liquid as possible, and what's left in the bag is almond meal, useful in its own right for baking. The liquid that strains through is your milk, richer, creamier, and considerably more almond-forward than most cartons on the shelf, keeping in the refrigerator for about 4 to 5 days. One thing worth mentioning, if you or anyone in your household has a tree nut allergy, this obviously isn't the substitution for you, and that applies to store-bought almond milk as well as homemade. There's something worth sitting with in the fact that the exact tree chosen for one of the Old Testament's most dramatic miracles is the same tree quietly sitting in a carton in most refrigerators today, reduced down to a thin fraction of what it actually is. Aaron's staff didn't just sprout a leaf. It went through an entire season's transformation overnight, ending in fruit so real that it was later kept inside the Ark of the Covenant as a permanent sign. That's not a small detail to attach to a nut most people only think about when they're scanning a cereal box label. This is really the same quiet theme running through so much of what we cover on this channel. It's not that almond milk itself is good or bad. It's that the modern, mass-produced version has quietly drifted from what the actual ingredient could offer, diluted down for cost and shelf life until the nut that once budded overnight in the most sacred room in Israel barely registers in the carton named after it. Let's come back to where we started. Dorothy pouring the same thin carton over her cereal, never once connecting it to a staff that bloomed and bore fruit in a single night. 3,000 years ago, in a room built specifically to hold the presence of God. And an almond tree, still the first to bloom each spring, still watching, the way its name always said it would. If there's one thing to take from today, let it be this. Sometimes the most overlooked ingredient in your kitchen has a history, dramatic enough that, if you actually knew it, you'd never look at the carton the same way again. This video is for educational purposes only and is not medical advice. Always consult your doctor before making dietary changes, especially if you or a family member has a tree nut allergy. If this kind of ancestral wisdom speaks to you, consider subscribing. It helps this channel more than you'd probably guess. And if you do it right now, you can go about the rest of your day knowing you've already helped someone today. Because next time, we're looking at a weapon the Byzantine Empire used for 800 years that was so effective and so secret, the formula disappeared when the empire fell. We'd love to have you along.